Good up.
This is channel 253. Beep, boop, boop.
On this episode of the Grit and Grain Podcast.
If you're talking about early pioneers for like really, really outstanding beer, Tacoma was like this wild kind of hub of craft beer activity. There's a ton of immigration from traditional beer producing countries, German immigration, Czech immigration, Balkan immigration. And so a bunch of people who could make world-class beer from Europe came here and was like, hey, there's no breweries here, but the water here is awesome.
Did you know Channel 253 is member supported? I'm producer Doug Mackey, and I hope you will show your support by going to channel253.com/membership and join. Thank you.
Welcome to the Grit and Grain Podcast, where we explore and celebrate the craft beer industry, community, and history in Tacoma, Washington, and surrounding Pacific Northwest areas. Thank you so much for hanging out. Let's get to it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Grit and Grain Podcast. My name is Matt McLaren, coming to you guys from, I guess, a couple of different places in this particular podcast release. This is a different intro than you guys are used to, but we ended up doing a special episode that we're going to release this week. And it was actually recorded at Channel 253's Adult Civics Happy Hour / Podcast Fest. We were invited to do a live recording, and we had never done that before. And it's something that we want to do, especially during like beer festivals and beer weeks around the state if we get invited. And so we wanted to get a good baseline. So Ron and myself hung out, did a live podcast in front of a big crowd of enthusiastic podcast listeners, and tried to drunkenly stumble our way through Tacoma's beer history, why Tacoma beer is awesome, what started the beer craze in this area, and what Tacoma is doing today to keep people engaged and keep the beer world fun and captivating. And so that's what this podcast is a live recording in front of a live audience. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. We want to do more of these, so you'll probably see these popping up. We have some plans to do one during Tacoma Beer Week and hopefully some other ones after that. But yeah, please enjoy this live recording.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Grit and Grain Podcast. Coming to you guys from the press room. My name is Matt McLaren, and this is Ron Swarner.
Hello.
How's it going, Ron?
It's going great. I'm thrown off by this thing, though.
I know. I'm going to take some getting used to.
There's no barley wine. Secondly, there's no green room. There's no pre-podcast massage. I got used to that. So.
Thanks, folks. Good night. Yeah, so if you guys listen, thank you so much. If you don't, we are the newest addition to the Channel 253 network. Our podcast is weekly. We record from the Parkway Tavern in the little red room in the middle, which actually makes a wonderful studio. And we try to keep everybody updated on what's going on in the beer world. Beer is a huge part of not only the Northwest, but Tacoma specifically. Tacoma has a super robust history when it comes to beer. Ron and I both work in the craft beer world, and so we'll tell you guys a little bit about that, and then maybe hopefully convince you guys why you should care about craft beer in Tacoma. So yeah, Ron, do you want to tell everybody why you're qualified to talk about this?
First, I'm drinking a Bodhi.
Oh yeah, what are you drinking?
What are you drinking?
I actually have a Seven Seas Pilsner.
Oh, cheers.
Yeah. Thanks for picking a Tacoma beer, Ron.
Damn it.
If you haven't listened, this is most of this is most of the episodes. It's just me talking crap to Ron.
Yeah. And me taking it.
So yeah, can you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
I grew up in Tacoma. I went to Oprah Elementary School, Putloff Junior High, Lakes High School.
You're starting at elementary school, okay.
Yeah, I did.
Cool.
Well, that's when my drinking started. And then went to UW, and I've been drinking craft beer the day it came out. So seriously, that's how old I am.
That's probably true. That's probably true.
I was drinking Sierra Nevada in '83 and ESB from Red Hook in '84, and and I never looked back. And then I started several publications in this town. The first was called Choices, and it was an arts and entertainment and music publication, and that morphed into Tacoma City Paper, and that morphed into the Weekly Volcano. And so through all those things, I was writing about beer and the restaurant and the bar scene and the theater scene and the music scene in this town. But always, beer was always there, in and out with all that. And then about 12 years ago, I started writing about beer in an actual column in the Volcano, and I fell in love with the community. Beer brings people together. It's a very community, way back when they were sitting in medieval times around the fire, that's where they held their meetings, that's where they met their neighbors, and that continues on today in Tacoma. If you walk anywhere in Tacoma, most likely, because it's a small, big town, most likely you'll recognize somebody, and most likely you'll be holding a beer, hopefully. And then the freaking internet happened, and it took a lot of advertising away. And so I pivoted, and I wanted to stay involved with beer. So I called up my two sandwich buddies, Robbie and Justin Peterson. I said, hey, I got this idea. Let's do a bottle shop, tap room, and restaurant in one, and let's put it in Proctor. And it kind of worked out. Things are going well. And
It worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
What was your column called?
New beer column. Because every week was new. Yeah.
The creative force behind this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Peaks and Pints has been open since
November 1st, 2016.
Yep.
Yep.
So if you guys haven't been, please do go. It's a fantastic local business.
Thank you.
And survived COVID. Thanks, Ron. My name's Matt again. Like Ron, I work in the beer industry, but I work on a different side. So I work for a distributor. I'm a sales and brand manager for a small craft beer distributor that's based just south of Seattle. But I've lived in Tacoma my entire life. My very first job was actually in a brewery here at the Harmon Brewery. I used to shovel the wet grain for the head brewer back then when they first opened. I was 14 years old, so I had no idea how lucky I was to be working in this industry. I was too young to appreciate the tutelage of a very skilled beer maker who was bringing Great American Beer Festival medals to Tacoma before a lot of us could actually drink. And that was a huge deal. And I had many jobs after that. And then once I got back into beer, I realized it was in my blood. And like Ron, I just did not look back. I knew that if I was going to do anything with my life, it would probably be in this industry. And if I was going to stick to this industry, I should do my best to be a decorated professional in this industry. So I took I started on the path for my Cicerone certification, which if you're familiar with the wine world, it's identical to the sommelier for wine, basically. We test, we study, you do tasting exams, things like that. So I'm an advanced Cicerone. I'm one of about 140 in the world, which means I'm just a professional nerd and I can tell you a lot about the beer that I'm drinking. Yeah. But hopefully it does kind of give me some sort of qualification to actually, talk about the beer that we're drinking, usually on the podcast, talk about the beer that's coming up around the Northwest that is important or good or should be paid attention to. And a lot of that kind of worked into the thesis of the podcast. When we first sort of started it, we realized that there was, beer is so awesome. It really does bring people together, but there's just a million different things out there, and there's 100 different ways to decide what kind of beer you're drinking, and context makes a huge difference. And if you know the stories behind some of the people who are actually making this stuff, it totally changes how you look at the beer you're drinking. Same thing with wine, same thing with anything, but we both had a chance to kind of give folks context and tell these stories and bring people in who have changed the beer world in more ways than you can imagine. And a lot of them are from this area. And so it worked out so well. And it just, we were able to build up. This is, just so you guys know, this is actually, this week was our 52nd episode. So it's our anniversary.
Yay!
But it's been a wonderful year of doing that, of telling those stories, giving out that context, and being goofy on microphones.
Yeah. How many Cicerones are in the state?
There's 5 now at this level. So there's 4 levels. There's one above me, which is a master Cicerone. There's 22, I think, in the world. Not doing that yet.
Yeah.
My wife, sitting right here, has been very patient while I do this. So we'll just wait. But yeah, and it's, that certification is great, helps my job, helps all that. But I mostly want to be able to actually tell people what they should be looking for when they're drinking beer, why the ingredients are important, why the ingredients that are actually from this area are important, and sometimes having the language really helps. And so that's what I try to bring to the podcast is the nerd words.
So the podcast was your idea, Matt.
It was.
And why did you want to start the podcast?
So the third person who is usually on the mic that you guys are hearing is actually Sean Jackson, who's the GM at the Parkway.
That's why you haven't heard an F-bomb yet.
That is true. I feel like I've been on my best behavior so far. 9 minutes in. Let's see. So Sean's been in the industry for a long time, and he was a brewer at E9. Fantastic local brewery. Again, if you have not been, you totally should. One of the most important breweries in Washington, and it's wonderful that they're from Tacoma. Sean, who again is the third person on the mic usually, was a brewer there and has been in the industry for a long time. And he is somebody who really loves to be able to tell the story of the people who started trends in the industry. And a lot of times, because the public just doesn't have access or like windows into the industry, there's a lot of like behind the curtain stuff or how the sausage is made stuff that people just don't know. And so he will have fantastic people who we consider celebrities in the beer world come and sit at his bar to do an event, and nobody knows who they're looking at or talking to. And sometimes they just sit there by themselves for an hour. And when I go in there, I like gush like a fanboy because I might not be doing this if it wasn't for the work that they did. Yeah. But we wanted a way for those stories to be conveyed to everybody. And so when I sat Sean down and said, hey, if those guys are here at the bar telling stories anyway, why don't we just mic them up? And then Doug and Eric got involved and gave us a space to do that, a safe space.
Yeah, we brought in Charles Finkel, who started Merchant Devin before we started Pike Brewing. And he was responsible for bringing basically European beers to Washington. He actually named, if you know the Iyengar Celebator, Charles Finkel named it. And that blew us all away. We didn't know that. Yeah. What's that? Roseanne did?
His wife, yeah.
Okay.
Team effort.
Yeah, she will. Yeah.
Ron's like, thanks, Phaedra.
Yeah. Also, we've had the Georgetown, Manny and Roger in. We've had, who else historically?
Will and Mari Kemper just came through.
The Kempers, who started Thomas Kemper back in the 90s, and then took off to Europe and took off to the East Coast to basically help people open up brew pubs. And then they came back and started chucking it in 2008. And then if you've ever been to Chuckanut, you'll see their wall of medals. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's been a year of like talking to incredible, industry folks. The reason that we thought it would be important to like have these talks, especially in Tacoma, and actually especially at the Parkway, is just because Tacoma really does love beer. And there's a lot of people here who are way better at beer than they think they are. Even just casual drinkers seem to be able to tell the difference between good beer and great beer. And more often than not, great beer is what gets popular and is chosen. And it's kind of wild because when you look at like the history of beer in Tacoma, it is way more robust than almost anywhere else in the country. Like people were making beer in Tacoma before Seattle, before most parts of California, before a lot of the East Coast. Like if you're talking about early pioneers for like really, really outstanding beer, Tacoma was like this wild kind of hub of craft beer activity. There's a ton of immigration from traditional beer producing countries, German immigration, Czech immigration, Balkan immigration. And so a bunch of people who could make world-class beer from Europe came here and was like, hey, there's no breweries here. But the water here is awesome, so we should all start breweries.
And the trains came here before Seattle.
Right. So just like Tacoma ended up being this thing where beer was so robust from the very beginning. And it's funny, I mean, like one of the other theses of the podcast was sort of to connect the history and how craft beer is in Tacoma's DNA with how people choose to support the industry now and how they engage with the industry. I made a good joke about Peaks and Pints surviving COVID, but every craft beer business survived COVID in Tacoma, and that was unheard of in almost every other city. My distributor I work all across Washington, and everywhere had major closures, as you guys can imagine. Somehow Tacoma was able to like keep all of their craft beer businesses afloat, which is wild. And it kind of speaks to how, again, people don't know how ingrained the craft beer world is in Tacoma's DNA, but we've spent a lot of episodes actually talking about that. So we wanted to give you guys a quick like speed run drunk history of Tacoma beer. Fire away, Ron.
About 10,000 years ago, man learned to ferment grain into beer. And then Homo erectus Matt Driscoll settled down in a fixer-upper and began farming. Homo erectus Eric Hamburg, who also spelled his first name with a K, didn't want to pay 5 clams for a sheep bladder full of beer, so he made his own. And before we knew it, civilization was born.
That's the whole story.
That's it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But
that's more accurate than you think it is.
Yeah. And then, so in the Middle Ages, brewing began in the European monasteries and convents, and hops were added to the process. And Bring Out Your Dead Ale probably came out right around then. Columbus found that the Native Americans were making beer, and they called him a phony. I know that for a fact. And then it was 1864, on December 25th, 1864, Union Army veteran Job Carr paddles his canoe to what eventually became Old Town Tacoma. He builds a cabin. Tacoma's love affair with beer begins as he sat along the banks of Commencement Bay stirring his wort. It is only natural with the mix of working-class Scandinavians and Hungarians and the Germans that everybody in Tacoma started homebrewing, including the gentleman sitting next to me.
Way back then.
Yeah. What was your first beer?
That I made?
Yeah.
Are you really asking?
Yeah, I want to know.
It was a vanilla cherry porter. It was delicious.
In 1865, Oregon Trail pioneer Ezra Meeker started growing hops in Puyallup before Yakima was a thing. And
most of the earliest hop crops were, like Puyallup was Greater Tacoma, were from here. And some of you guys might know, but Washington actually supplies about 90-ish% of all of the hops that are used across the country. It is the best growing region for hops, and they actually started in Greater Tacoma long before Yakima was sort of discovered to be the kind of the key area. But yeah, Ezra Meeker was a pioneer in terms of like hop cultivation, early hop sciences, and then just like hop utilization in beer. All started within like a 15-minute drive of here.
Yeah, and he was making annual or even more trips, probably every 6 months to New York. Mm-hmm. And he was selling them on the market there, and he was going down to San Francisco too. I mean, he was the hop.
It.
Yeah.
San Francisco, like a lot of sort of like metropolitan areas of California, were super reliant on beer businesses that had started in Tacoma. There was tons of transit of beer between Tacoma specifically and many cities in California. Some of the biggest breweries started in this area, which Ron will probably get to, but because there was actually crazy high quality water here. So a lot of you guys know that the brewery district is called the brewery district, right? And we all kind of know that because there's a ton of breweries there. Seven Seas, Blackfleet, E9, they're all kind of in the same area. The brewery district is actually called that because that's where all of the springs were with really high quality water that 100 years ago people were building breweries around. That's why it's the brewery district. So it does still make sense because there's a ton of breweries there still. Yeah. But fresh spring water that was really soft, really low in minerality was perfect for making especially Czech and German style beers. And so that's why those beers became so prominent. And that's why so many other cities who weren't blessed with the water quality that we have here were so reliant on beer transit from here to there.
And the Prairie Line went through it too.
Yes.
The railroad. In 1883, the Donahue Brewery opens at East 26 and East J Street, a few blocks from the Tacoma Dome. That is the official first brewery in Tacoma. And then next year is when Old Town and New Tacoma, they merged into one Tacoma. Mm-hmm. And the Diedrich Stegman Brewery at 23rd and Jefferson popped up. And it was... that's where all the loggers and the sailors were drinking back in the day.
That's right.
Yeah. And then that brewery morphed into the United States Brewing and Ice Company. Yeah. And then Anton Huth bought the Donahue and eventually turned it into Pacific, which I'm wearing.
Good job.
Pacific Brewing and Malting Company. Which was in the brewery just for a long time before it went down and reopened in 2014 on the other end of the Pacific. And then in 1901 is when the Columbia Brewery opened up in the brewery district, and which eventually they started making Alt Heidelberg. And that eventually became the genesis for it becoming the Heidelberg Brewery after Prohibition.
Yes. Yep. Which hopefully you guys will recognize. Heidelberg is just not that long ago starting to be reproduced by 7 Seas in Tacoma, which is a much bigger deal than you might think it is. Domestic beer, especially after Prohibition, just destroyed everything. It went from 4,000 breweries just prior to Prohibition down to like 44. Yeah. And it's like one of the most wild consolidations of an industry ever. And even when Prohibition ended, there's no way for people to like rediscover craft beer it was decades. When Thomas Kemper opened, which we just mentioned, we had the people who started Thomas Kemper, when they opened, I think there was 6 breweries in Washington. Yeah. And that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. 8 in the whole Northwest. Yeah. Count Widmer.
And it sounds like it was it sounds like it was complete history, but those people are still alive and active in the industry, and they started a brewery when there was only like 26 in the country. Yeah. Which just kind of shows you not only how long it took for craft beer to kind of regain a hold on everything, but also the boom that craft beer had after the 80s. And it's really been in like this crazy gold rush period. And so the reason that Heidelberg is important is because there is almost no domestic style lagers like that being produced by local breweries in historic buildings like that. This is really one of the only ones. Mm-hmm. And 7 Seas is actually in an old Heidelberg building. So not only are they reproducing one of the most important beers that's ever been made in Washington, but also doing it in one of the original buildings that was owned by the Heidelberg company.
It was the shipping building, I believe. Yep.
Yeah. If you guys see that beer around and it's sitting next to a Rainier or a PBR or a Coors Light, choose Heidelberg. Yeah. It really is a big deal. And it's a great nod to, again, like how robust the history of beer is in Tacoma. And it was a huge deal when it came out. And we gush about it quite often. Yeah. And if you can, drink one at the Parkway. So for those of you guys who don't know, Parkway is the oldest tavern in Tacoma. They got their license officially like 4 months after Prohibition ended. So you can imagine that little house was probably still pretty active before they actually got their official license, because it was real close to the water. And once Prohibition was over, they were like, hey, we can just make this legit. But it's crazy. You can even find Tacoma's Historical Society will post pictures of like Heidelberg coolers in like the 60s inside the Parkway Tavern when it looked like an old diner. If you go there and drink that beer, the joke I always make is it's like I'm talking to my ancestors, like in the beer world. Because it really does feel like that. There's probably somebody sitting at the bar that you're sitting at, drinking the beer that you're drinking, that was made in the building that it was made in today. And that's wild. It just doesn't exist anywhere else. And if you want historical literacy on Tacoma, just that experience will give you that.
Yeah. And take a tour around the building with your beer, because on the walls is Tacoma's brewing history.
Oh, in the Parkway?
Yep.
It might as well be a museum.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Totally. In 1993 is when Fish opened up in Olympia. In 94 is when E9 opened up in Tacoma. And 95 was when the Harmon opened up. Mm-hmm. And then it started taking off. But it was a long gap before, I would say, Wingman opened in 2017.
17?
I think 7 or 14.
14.
14. Yeah.
14.
14, right.
Nailed it.
And Pacific was shortly after that. Seven Seas was 2008 in Gig Harbor. Then it burnt down. In 2009, they rebuilt it. And then they popped into the brewery district. And
have been a staple ever since.
Yeah.
Still making delicious beer. Yeah. Oh, man. And so now we have, like, the beer world in Tacoma today. There's a ton of breweries here. There's a ton of businesses that support really, really high quality beer. And since we're not that far from it, and we have a couple of minutes, Tacoma Beer Week has also made its post-COVID resurgence for a bunch of in-person events, which are all happening the week starting August 12th. So there's a big festival, the Brew53 Festival, where a lot of local Northwest breweries will be featured. So if you guys haven't yet, you should check it out. It's actually part of a 3-day music festival this year. But Brew53 leads up to Tacoma Beer Week, which will follow all that. There's a ton of events going on. We have movie premieres this year. We have features from all kinds of breweries from the Northwest, fun, family, interactive type stuff. And it's the whole point of that, again, is it's the same thesis as the podcast, is just to give people a reason to engage with this industry and community. So if you guys haven't yet, go to tacomabeerweek.com and check out what they have going on this year, because it's going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. But we'll also talk about all that stuff on the podcast too. So keep listening.
Yeah. gritandgrainpodcast.com. But we're also on iHeartRadio, Amazon.
Yeah. Good plug. Yeah. We did want to leave like 5 or 10 minutes open for people who might have questions. It's a weird industry. It's kind of romantic sometimes. Ron and I both work in it. If you've ever wondered something about what it's like being in the beer industry, we're here to answer that. I see Eric's hand up.
Yeah. Nope.
Rainier. So the question was, is Rainier local anymore? And Rainier is no longer produced in Washington.
Nope. It's in Pabst in California.
Yeah. So Rainier was bought by a Pabst Brewing Company, an enormous kind of beer conglomerate. They do still produce beer, but it's probably not what you consider craft beer anymore. Pabst was one of the breweries that shifted during Prohibition and started making all kinds of stuff like cheese.
Yeah.
The stories of what breweries were doing when Prohibition happened, and they were like, yo, we have all of this like expensive crap here. What are we gonna do?
Yeah,
Pabst is like, we're making craft singles.
Sodas, near beer.
Near beer was a big thing. Ice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
That was later.
Yes. Yes. So the question was, if you're still seeing Rainier beer cans, Pabst does make Rainier. And if you actually look at the can, it says canned, packaged and produced by Pabst in California. Mm-hmm. A lot of people would argue, myself included. So the question was, is it still real Rainier's recipe? A lot of people would argue that the commodification of the ingredients that go into things like Rainier have watered down its flavor quite a bit from the original kind of glory of this. This is another reason why Heidelberg is wonderful, honestly.
Because they did the opposite.
So they did the opposite. Heidelberg is still the same price, but you actually, they have a little bit of like Bohemian malt, which is it's a European malt that you might use. And it has a really specific kind of toasty bread, kind of grainy flavor that all of those beers used to have. And it's really great. It's delicate, it's expressive, it's food friendly, and it doesn't exist in all of the other kind of domestic style beers that you see. Heidelberg specifically wanted to nod to the European beer that inspired it to be made in the first place. So Seven Seas very cleverly kind of put this additional flavor in there that you just won't find in things like Rainier. If you're looking for something that does taste like original Coors Banquet, original Rainier, original Milwaukee, Heidelberg comes the closest.
And
really
also take a tour of Seven Seas, because the history of Heidelberg is all over their walls.
Yes.
Including many, many original.
Oh, man.
Wow.
That's awesome.
My mother was embarrassed, but
I'm glad we haven't been talking too much crap about it.
Yeah. What are you doing next Wednesday?
Because you got some stories. I saw one more hand up. Yeah. That's a great question. So the question was, as professional nerds, how do we feel about the non-alcoholic beer trend? I think it's great, actually. I don't want to speak for Ron, so I'd let him say so.
I think it's great, too.
I think it's great. I think that I was just having this talk with somebody this week. We had a fantastic couple of women from the industry on the podcast this week. Shauna and Jess from Seattle Beer School, really fantastic organization that teaches people about beer and then also strives to make the community and industry more inclusive. And we were talking about how beer is much more about the experience than the liquid. And NA beer is a good example of why that kind of rings true. If you're doing something and you don't want to get buzzed while you're doing it, but you still just want the experience of cracking a can open on a fishing boat or whatever it is, I think NA beer is a good option for that. And actually there's like the technology that goes into making NA beer taste really good is like bananas advanced these days versus what it was even 10 years ago. Really fantastic pioneers of like really good craft NA beer is Three Magnets down in Olympia. They do a line called Self-Care, and it's the closest you can get to historical styles of beer that are traditional, on point, wonderful flavor with zero alcohol. I think it's a great trend. I think it makes craft beer more accessible to people. Yeah. Any more questions? That was a great nerdy question. Yes. That's a great question. And you asked it like a professional podcast host would. The question was, we mentioned water a few times. Why do we keep saying that? And what does it actually have to do with beer? So the water in this area, which again is kind of why the brewery district is what it is. It's why so many people started making beer here. A lot of it was happy accidents, all the transit, all the shipping, all the trains, everything. Specifically, the water in the Northwest, but specifically Tacoma, is really low in minerality, so it's super soft, whereas other regions might have higher concentrations of things like chloride, sulfates, even like magnesium, things like that. All of that stuff can affect beer flavor, either positively or negatively, depending on how you want to make your beer. But having the cleanest, blankest slate possible is the best way to produce like really clean beer that everybody wants to drink. The water in Tacoma specifically it's almost identical to the water in Pilsen in the Czech Republic, which is where Pilsner was invented. So that's kind of, you can see the relation, right? Like the water here is almost identical to where Pilsners were made, and some of the most important early American lagers were produced in this area, and that's because of that. We had the blankest slate when it came to water. We could be the most creative with it and produce the cleanest beer possible because it was so low in minerality. Yes. So the question was, with Eastern Washington being so hop heavy and there being so many farms out there committed to hops, is that why craft breweries are popping up so much in Washington? That's 100% true. And it's funny because it leads into something that is actually coming up in the next couple of months, which is fresh hop season. Some of you guys might engage. If you don't, it is one of the coolest things to be a part of because there's like one place in the world that really you can experience this season, and it's right here. So the question was about, Eastern Washington being so packed with hops. Most hops, the way that they are processed is they're grown, and then they're dried out, and then they're preserved, and then breweries can use them for years to come. Fresh hop season, because all of the hops are right here within a 2-hour drive of us, brewers can drive over and go pick hops off the vine and then bring them back before they are dried out and kilned for this insanely fresh hop flavor that it lasts for like a month and a half. And it's a nightmare for people like me and Ron in the industry because it's like a mad rush for just all of the freshest, craziest product that you can get. but it's so much fun. And I travel around the country. I'm lucky to be able to go to a bunch of different places and try beer and talk to people in the industry. And every single one of them is like, man, I can't believe you guys get to do fresh hop stuff in Washington. But yeah, it's definitely why there's so much craft beer up here. It's also definitely why drinking beer in Tacoma and the surrounding area is awesome.
Yeah. Yakima supplies about 70% of the hops in the nation.
It is 90%.
And 90? It's 90 now?
It's 90. You might be right, but I said 90 earlier, and so.
But when the fresh hops are being driven, the brewers in the brewery have already started the kettle.
Yep.
So it literally, they pull up and just pop it right in. Also, independent craft malters are popping up in the area too. So, we're becoming one giant estate brewery.
That's a good point. Great, yeah, for sure. So yeah, malting is like another part of it. Obviously, hops, malt, water, yeast. Those are the 4 things you need to make beer. And there are small malt producers in the Northwest as well. Places like Link Malt or Mecca Grade, really fantastic small independent farmers that are making these really high quality raw ingredients that everybody across the country is so jealous that we have access to. And again, it's another reason why engaging with the community here is so different than anywhere else. If you're in Tacoma, choose Tacoma beer, and if you're anywhere in the Northwest, pick beer that's made here with ingredients that are made here if you can help it, because it's one of the only places you can actually do that in this country, which is exciting and unique. And hopefully, just in the 40-ish minutes we've been talking, you guys have learned something about why craft beer is awesome in Tacoma. Yeah. Any more questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
I think we're out.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for having us.
Cheers.
Thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us at Grit and Grain Podcast wherever you get your social media and catch new episodes every Friday. Cheers.
Channel 253 is a member-supported podcast network. I'm producer Doug Mackey, and I'm asking you to become a member and show your support. Go to channel253.com/membership to join. Thank you. Grit and Grain is part of the Channel 253 podcast network. Check out our other shows: Nerd Farmer, Interchangeable White Ladies, Move to Tacoma, Crossing Division, Citizen Tacoma, What Say You, We Are Tacoma, Flounders B Team, and Taco Man.
This is Channel 253.
Get up.